I am 28 years old and my husband, Mark, is 30. We had been married for 3 years, and for the most part, things were calm. The only real source of tension in our lives was his mother, Carol. She was a woman who saw boundaries as suggestions, and my personal space as an extension of her own home. I had tried to be patient. I had tried to be understanding. I reminded myself that she was his mother and that family was important. But my patience was wearing thin, stretched to a fine, transparent thread that was about to snap. The calm was the kind you feel in the air just before a storm breaks, heavy and full of unspoken things. It all came to a head on a Sunday evening. We were having our weekly family dinner, a tradition Carol had insisted upon. It was always at our house. She said she loved my cooking. But I knew it was about establishing her presence in my home, in our lives. My father-in-law, Tom, was there too. He was a quiet man who mostly just agreed with whatever Carol said. He was her echo, the silent nod that gave her declarations the weight of a joint decision. The dinner started normally. Small talk about the weather, questions about our jobs that Carol never really listened to the answers to. She would ask how my work was going, and before I could finish a sentence, she would turn to Mark and ask him about his upcoming business trip. It was a subtle but constant dismissal. I was the supporting character in the story of her son's life. I had learned to swallow my annoyance and just smile. It was easier than starting a fight that I knew I would lose, because Mark would always try to smooth things over, which really meant asking me to let it go. We were eating dessert, a cheesecake I had spent the afternoon making. Carol took a small bite and set her fork down. She looked across the table, first at Tom, then at Mark, and finally her eyes landed on me. There was a glint in them, a look of triumph that I had come to dread. It was the look she got right before she announced a decision she had made for everyone else. "We have some wonderful news," she said, her voice bright and final. Tom smiled weakly beside her, a puppet on a string. Mark shifted in his seat, his eyes fixed on his plate. He suddenly seemed very interested in the crumbs of cheesecake left there. A cold knot formed in my stomach. I knew this was not going to be good news for me. "Tom and I have decided to sell our house," Carol continued, beaming. "The upkeep is just becoming too much for us, you know. All those stairs and the garden." I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe they were downsizing, moving to a condo. That would be fine. That would be great, even. "Oh," I said, trying to sound encouraging. "Have you found a place you like?" Carol's smile widened. It was a predatory smile, all teeth and no warmth. "We have," she said, her voice dripping with sweetness. "We are moving in here with you two. Your husband agreed." The air left my lungs. The room went silent. The only sound was the quiet hum of the refrigerator. I looked at Mark. He was just staring. His face was pale, his mouth slightly open. He would not look at me. He just stared at his empty plate as if it held the answers to the universe. He did not deny it. He did not correct her. He said nothing. And in his silence, I heard the loudest betrayal of my life. My world, which had been built on a foundation of trust with him, suddenly felt like it was crumbling to dust beneath my feet. My mind was racing, trying to catch up with the words she had just thrown at me like stones. Moving in, not visiting, not staying for a while. Moving in. The words echoed in the silent space between us. I felt my hands start to tremble, so I clasped them in my lap, digging my nails into my palms to keep them steady. I needed to stay calm. I needed to think. I looked at Carol. Her expression was one of pure, smug satisfaction. She had won. She had dropped her bomb and was now watching with delight as it destroyed my peace. Tom was looking down at his hands, avoiding everyone's eyes. He was a willing accomplice. A man who had long ago given up his own voice to amplify his wife's. And then there was Mark, my husband. The man who had promised to be my partner, to build a life with me. He was frozen, a statue of cowardice at my dinner table. His silence was a confession. It was a confirmation of everything I feared. He had gone behind my back. He had discussed our home, our future, our life, and made a decision without me. He had offered up our sanctuary to his mother without a single thought for my feelings. I felt a surge of anger, hot and sharp. It burned away the shock and left behind a cold, hard resolve. I would not be a guest in my own home. I would not have my life dictated to me by a woman who saw me as nothing more than an incubator for her future grandchildren and a live-in chef for her son. I took a slow, deliberate breath. I had to handle this carefully. If I screamed, I would be the hysterical, unreasonable wife. If I cried, I would be the weak, emotional woman. Carol would love that. She would feed on it. I had to be calm. I had to be logical. I had to be the adult in the room since my husband was apparently incapable of it. I turned my full attention to Mark. I kept my voice low and steady, but there was a core of steel in it that he had never heard before. "Mark," I said, and his eyes finally flickered up from his plate to meet mine. They were filled with panic. He looked like a cornered animal. "Is what your mother said true? Did you agree to have them move in with us?" He swallowed hard. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. He glanced at his mother, who gave him a tiny, almost imperceptible nod of encouragement. She was coaching him. Even now. She was telling him to stick to the plan, to manage me, to smooth it over. "It is not that simple," he finally mumbled, his voice barely a whisper. "It is a yes or no question, Mark," I said, my voice still quiet but gaining an edge. "Did you tell your mother that she and your father could move into our house?" "We were just talking about options," he said, deflecting. "Their house is a lot to maintain. We were brainstorming." Carol decided to jump in, her voice full of false sympathy. "He was just being a good son, dear," she said, patting my arm. I flinched away from her touch. "He worries about us. You should be proud of him for being so caring." I ignored her. My focus was entirely on my husband. "Brainstorming is one thing, Mark," I said. "Agreeing is another. Your mother seems to believe you agreed. She seems to believe this is a final decision. So I will ask you again. What did you tell her?" Mark looked trapped. He was caught between his mother's expectations and my direct question. For a moment, I saw a flicker of the man I married, the man who was supposed to be my partner. I saw the struggle in his eyes. But then it was gone, replaced by a familiar look of resignation. He always chose the path of least resistance, and that path always led straight to his mother's side. "I told her we would make it work," he said, his voice so low I could barely hear it. "Make what work, Mark?" I pressed. "Them staying here," he admitted, finally looking me in the eye. And in that moment, I saw it all. The secret conversations, the whispered promises, the complete and utter disregard for me, for our marriage. He had not just betrayed me. He had given away our life together to make his own easier. I stood up from the table. My chair scraped against the floor, the sound unnaturally loud in the tense silence. "I think you all need to leave," I said, my voice shaking slightly despite my best efforts to control it. Carol gasped, clutching her chest in mock horror. "Well, I never," she said, "after all we have done for you." "You need to leave," I repeated, looking only at Mark. "Now." Tom started to get up, eager to escape the confrontation. He pulled at Carol's sleeve, but she shook him off. She was not done. She wanted to see this through. She wanted to see me break. "You're being very emotional," she said, her voice condescending. "Mark, talk to your wife. She is not thinking clearly." That was it. That was the final push. The calm I had been fighting to maintain finally shattered, but it did not come out as a scream or tears. It came out as something colder, something harder. I walked over to the front door and opened it wide. The cool night air rushed in. "Get out of my house," I said. My voice was no longer quiet. It was clear and strong and echoed with a finality that surprised even me. Carol's jaw dropped. She looked at Mark, expecting him to rush to her defense, to put me in my place. But Mark just sat there, looking at me with a strange mix of fear and something else I could not quite identify. Tom finally managed to pull Carol to her feet. "Come on, dear," he mumbled. "Let's just go. We can talk about this later." Carol shot me a look of pure hatred. "This is not over," she hissed as Tom guided her toward the door. "Oh, I know," I said, looking straight at her. "It is just beginning." They left. I closed the door behind them and leaned against it, my heart pounding in my chest. The house was silent again, but this was a different kind of silence. It was not the heavy silence of unspoken tension. It was the empty silence of a home that had just been fractured. I turned to face Mark. He was still sitting at the table, surrounded by the remnants of our disastrous dinner. He looked small and lost. For a fleeting moment, I felt a pang of pity for him, but it was quickly replaced by the cold, hard anger that was now settling deep in my bones. "How could you?" I asked, my voice trembling with the force of my emotions. "How could you do this to us?" He finally stood up and came toward me. He reached out to touch me, but I stepped back, away from his hand. "Honey, please," he said, his voice pleading. "Let me explain." "Explain what?" I said. "Explain how you decided to turn our home into a retirement community without consulting me? Explain how you stood by and let your mother announce it to me like I am some child who does not get a say in her own life?" "It was not like that," he insisted. "She put me on the spot. You know how she is." "I do know how she is, Mark," I shot back. "But I am supposed to know how you are too. I thought you were my husband. I thought we were a team. But a team does not make decisions like this behind the other person's back." "I was going to tell you," he said weakly. "I was just trying to find the right time." "The right time?" I laughed, a bitter, humorless sound. "When would have been the right time, Mark? When her moving truck was pulling into our driveway? When she was directing the movers where to put her furniture in our guest room? Was that the right time you were waiting for?" He had no answer for that. He just stood there, his shoulders slumped in defeat. He knew he was wrong. He knew he had messed up, but I could see he did not understand the depth of his betrayal. He thought this was a simple mistake, a communication error that could be fixed with an apology and a few empty promises. He did not understand that he had broken something fundamental between us. He had broken my trust. "I need some space," I said, my voice flat. "I am going to stay with my sister for a few days. I need to think." Panic flashed in his eyes again. "No, do not go," he said, taking a step toward me. "We can fix this. I will talk to her. I will tell her it is not going to happen." "You should have told her that from the beginning," I said, my voice cold. "You should have told her that the moment she suggested it. The fact that you did not, the fact that you let it get this far, that is the problem, Mark. That is what I need to think about." I walked past him and went upstairs to our bedroom. The room we had decorated together, the room that was supposed to be our sanctuary, suddenly felt tainted. I pulled a small suitcase out of the closet and started throwing clothes into it. I was not thinking about what I was packing. I was just moving, acting on pure, raw instinct. I needed to get out of that house. I needed to be away from him. Mark followed me upstairs. He stood in the doorway watching me pack. He looked helpless, like a little boy who had just broken his mother's favorite vase. "Please do not do this," he said, his voice cracking. "I love you. We can work through this." I stopped packing and turned to face him. "I love you too, Mark," I said, and it was the truth. That was what made this so painful. But love is not enough. It has to be built on respect and trust. And tonight, you showed me that you do not respect me. You showed me that when it comes down to it, you will always choose your mother's happiness over mine. I zipped up my suitcase and walked toward the door. He did not move out of the way. He just stood there, blocking my path. Please, he whispered, give me a chance to make this right. I looked at him, really looked at him, and I saw the desperation in his eyes. He was scared. He was scared of losing me. But he was also scared of standing up to his mother. And in that moment, I realized that his fear of her was greater than his fear of losing me. That was the core of the problem. That was what had to change. You want to make it right? I said, my voice quiet but firm. Then you fix it. You call your mother and you tell her that she is not moving in. You tell her that it was never an option and that you were wrong to ever let her believe it was. You tell her that this is our home, not hers, and you do it without me there to back you up. You do it on your own. He stared at me, his eyes wide. He had never had to confront his mother like that before. I had always been the one to gently push back, to set the boundaries that he would then let her cross. He had always used me as a shield. Now I was taking that shield away. And then, I continued, you need to figure out why you thought it was okay to make a decision like this without me. You need to figure out why you are so afraid of her that you would risk our marriage to keep her happy. And when you have figured that out, you can call me. Until then, I think it is best if we do not talk. I pushed past him and walked down the stairs. I did not look back. I could feel his eyes on me, but I did not turn around. I walked out the front door, got in my car, and drove away. The tears I had been holding back finally started to fall. They were hot tears of anger and grief. Anger at him, at his mother, at the situation. And grief for the marriage I thought I had, for the partner I thought he was. I drove to my sister's house. Her name is Lisa, and she is my best friend. She opened the door and took one look at my face and my suitcase and pulled me into a hug. I did not have to say anything. She just held me while I cried, a storm of emotion that I had been suppressing all night. When I finally calmed down, we sat on her couch with mugs of hot tea. I told her everything, every word of the conversation, every look on their faces, the smug triumph on Carol's, the cowardly silence from Mark. Lisa listened patiently, her expression growing angrier and angrier as I spoke. When I was finished, she just shook her head. I am so sorry, she said, but I am not surprised. Carol has been pushing for this for years, and Mark has always let her get away with everything. I know, I said, my voice hoarse from crying. But I thought this was different. I thought our marriage, our home, I thought that was sacred. I thought that was the one place where he would finally draw a line. He has never had to draw a line before, Lisa said gently. You have always been there to do it for him. And you always did it so nicely, so politely, that it was easy for him to just step aside and let you handle it. He never had to face her directly. She was right. I had always been the diplomat. I had always tried to keep the peace. I had smoothed over Carol's passive-aggressive comments. I had made excuses for Mark's lack of a spine. I had done it all in the name of family harmony. But I was starting to realize that the only person who was ever being asked to sacrifice for that harmony was me. What do I do now? I asked, feeling lost. You do exactly what you told him to do, Lisa said, her voice firm. You give him space. You let him handle this. If he is the man you married, he will step up. He will fix this. And if he does not, well, then you have your answer, do not you? Her words were harsh, but they were true. This was a test for Mark. It was a test for our marriage. And the outcome would determine our entire future. The next day, I woke up feeling empty. The anger from the night before had cooled into a dull, heavy ache in my chest. I checked my phone. There were a dozen missed calls from Mark and a flood of text messages. They were all variations of the same thing. I am so sorry. Please come home. We can talk about this. There was no message that said, I talked to my mom. I fixed it. I put my phone on silent and tried not to think about it. Lisa made me breakfast, and we spent the morning watching stupid movies, trying to pretend that my life was not falling apart. but it was always there, a dark cloud hovering in the back of my mind. Around noon, my phone rang again. It was an unknown number. I hesitated, then answered it. "Hello?" I said. "Is this the woman who is trying to tear my family apart?" A voice hissed. It was Carol. My blood ran cold. "How did you get this number?" I asked. My sister's number was unlisted. "Mark gave it to me, of course," she said, her voice full of spite. "He is very upset. You have made him very unhappy." I could not believe it. He had given her my sister's number. He had sicked his mother on me. It was another betrayal, smaller than the first, but it cut just as deep. It showed me that he still was not getting it. He was still trying to get his mother to fight his battles for him. "I do not want to talk to you, Carol," I said, my voice shaking with anger. "Oh, but we have to talk," she said. "You need to understand something. Mark is my son. He will always be my son. You are just temporary. Wives can be replaced. A mother is forever." The cruelty of her words took my breath away. She was not just trying to move into my house. She was trying to erase me from my own life. She saw me as an obstacle, a temporary inconvenience in her relationship with her son. "You are a horrible person," I whispered. "I am a mother who loves her son," she shot back, "and I will not let you stand in the way of his happiness. He needs us. His father and I, we need to be there to support him. He is too stressed, too busy. He needs his family around him." "What he needs," I said, finding my voice again, "is a wife. A partner, not a mother to coddle him. He is a grown man, Carol, and you need to let him be one." "You are a selfish little girl," she spat. "You think you can just come into our family and make all the rules? Well, you are wrong. Mark will see that. He will see that you are the one causing all this trouble. He will come to his senses. And when he does, you will be all alone." She hung up. I stood there, phone in hand, trembling with a rage so intense it made me feel dizzy. This was not just about a living arrangement anymore. This was a war. And Carol had just made it clear that she would stop at nothing to win. I told Lisa what had happened. She was furious. "That is it," she said, her eyes flashing. "This has gone too far. Mark is not just a coward. He is actively working against you. He gave her your safe space. He let her attack you." "I know," I said, my voice hollow. "So what are you going to do?" she asked. I thought for a long moment. The hurt and the sadness were still there, but something else was starting to grow. A cold, hard determination. Carol thought I was a selfish little girl. She thought I was temporary. She thought I would just roll over and let her destroy my life. She was about to find out how wrong she was. "I am going to fight back," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "But I am not going to do it her way. I am not going to scream and yell and cause drama. I am going to be smart. I am going to be strategic. And I am going to take back my life." The first thing I needed was information. I had been operating on emotion, on the hurt of the betrayal. But I needed facts. I needed to understand the full picture. Why were they so desperate to sell their house and move in with us? Carol had said it was about the upkeep, but that felt like a lie. Their house was not that big, and Tom was retired. He had all the time in the world to work in the garden. There had to be another reason, a bigger reason. I started with the obvious. I went online and looked up their house on a real estate website. It was listed for sale. The price seemed a little low for their neighborhood, but not alarmingly so. I looked at the property records. Everything seemed normal. No liens, no second mortgages that I could see. I decided to call my friend, Sarah. She was a real estate agent. She was sharp and discreet, and I knew I could trust her. I explained the situation, keeping it as brief and unemotional as I could. "That is awful," she said when I was done. But not surprising. I have seen mother-in-laws like her before. They are like a force of nature. "Can you do me a favor?" I asked. Can you look into their property? See if there is anything unusual? Any reason they would be in a rush to sell? Of course, she said. I will make some calls. I can find out if there have been any recent inspections, any permits pulled. Sometimes that can tell you a story. While I waited for Sarah to get back to me, I turned my attention to my own finances. Mark and I had a joint checking account for household bills, but we kept our main savings in separate accounts. It was something I had insisted on when we got married. I had always believed in having my own financial independence. Now I was more grateful for that decision than ever. I logged into our joint account. I scrolled through the recent transactions, looking for anything out of the ordinary. And then I saw it. A series of large cash withdrawals over the past 6 months. $10,000 in total. They were all made from an ATM near his parents' house. My heart started to pound. Mark had been taking money from our joint account. He had been giving it to his parents. He had been doing it behind my back. The betrayal was so deep, so profound, it almost knocked the wind out of me. This was not just about him failing to stand up to his mother. This was a calculated, long-term deception. He had been stealing from us, from our future, to prop up his parents. And suddenly, everything made sense. The desperation to sell their house, the low asking price, the ridiculous plan to move in with us. They were in financial trouble. Deep trouble. And Mark had been trying to fix it secretly without telling me. The move-in was not just a power play by Carol. It was a financial bailout. They were planning on living with us, rent-free, so they could use the money from their house sale to pay off their debts. The phone rang. It was Sarah. I have some news, she said, her voice grim. And you are not going to like it. Tell me, I said, my voice flat. I was past the point of being shocked. Their house is a money pit, she said. I spoke to a contractor I know who gave them an estimate a few months ago. The foundation is cracked. There is mold in the basement. The wiring is ancient. He told them it would cost at least $100,000 to make the place livable and safe. So that was it. They were not just in debt. Their biggest asset, their house, was practically worthless. No one would buy it without a massive price reduction, and even then it would require a buyer willing to take on a huge renovation project. They were trapped. They did not disclose any of this on the listing, did they? I asked. Of course not, Sarah said. They are trying to unload it on some unsuspecting fool before the whole thing falls down around them. It is illegal, and it is disgusting. I thanked Sarah and hung up the phone. I sat there for a long time, staring at the wall. The pieces of the puzzle were all there, and they formed a picture that was uglier than I could have ever imagined. My husband had been lying to me for months. He had been draining our shared resources to cover up his parents' financial irresponsibility. And his solution, his grand plan, was to move them into my home and make their problem my problem for the rest of my life. The anger I felt before was nothing compared to the cold, hard fury that now filled me. This was not just a betrayal of trust. This was a conspiracy. Mark, Carol, and Tom. They had all been in on it. They had all been working together to manipulate me, to trap me in a situation that would benefit them at my expense. I thought about Carol's words on the phone. You are just temporary. Wives can be replaced. She did not see me as a person. She saw me as a resource, a bank account, a free place to live, and my husband, the man who was supposed to love and protect me, had co-signed that view of me. He had treated me like an asset to be managed, not a partner to be respected. I knew then that my marriage was not just in trouble. It was on life support, and I was the only one who could decide whether to pull the plug. But I was not going to make that decision based on emotion. I was going to make it based on facts and strategy. I had the information I needed. I had the proof of the financial deception. Now, I needed a plan. I called Mark. He answered on the first ring. Honey, he said, his voice full of a desperate fake relief. I have been so worried. Please come home, we can fix this. I am not coming home, Mark, I said. my voice devoid of any warmth. But we do need to talk. Meet me at the coffee shop near my office in an hour. And come alone. Of course, he said eagerly. Anything you want. I will be there. I hung up and took a deep breath. This was the first step, the first confrontation. But it was not going to be the final one. This was just a test. I needed to see what he would say, how he would react when confronted with some of the truth. I was not going to show him all my cards yet. I was just going to play one. And I was going to watch him very, very carefully. I drove to the coffee shop and got there early. I chose a small table in the corner, a place where we could talk without being easily overheard. I ordered a black coffee and waited. My hands were steady. My mind was clear. The storm of emotion had passed, and I was left in the calm, quiet eye of the hurricane. I knew what I had to do. Mark rushed in a few minutes later, looking flustered and anxious. He saw me and hurried over, a hopeful smile on his face. "Thank you for meeting me," he said, sitting down. "I am so sorry about everything. I never should have let it get this far." I just looked at him. I did not say anything. I let the silence hang in the air between us. He started to squirm. "I was going to tell you," he said, repeating the same weak excuse from the other night. I just did not know how. "Let's talk about money, Mark," I said, my voice low and even. He looked surprised. "Money? What does money have to do with this?" "I looked at our joint account today," I said, watching his face. I saw a series of cash withdrawals, $10,000 over the last 6 months, all from an ATM near your parents' house. Can you explain that to me? The color drained from his face. He looked like I had physically slapped him. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. He was caught. Utterly and completely caught. I can explain," he stammered. "I am sure you can," I said, my voice like ice. "But I want the truth, Mark. No more lies, no more excuses. Why did you take $10,000 from our account and give it to your parents without telling me?" He looked down at the table, unable to meet my eyes. "They were in trouble," he whispered. "They had some unexpected expenses. I was just trying to help them out." "What kind of expenses?" I pressed. "Just things," he said vaguely. "Repairs on the house. Bills." He was still lying. He was still trying to protect them, to minimize the situation. He was not ready to be honest with me. Not even now. "So you decided to steal from us to help them?" I said, letting the word steal hang in the air. "It is not stealing," he said, his voice rising in defense. "It is our money. I am entitled to half of it." "It is our joint account for our household expenses, Mark," I said calmly. "It is not your personal slush fund to bail out your parents from their poor financial decisions. And you did not just take your half. You took money that was meant for our future, for our life together." He fell silent again. He knew I was right. He had no defense. "This is not just about them moving in, is it?" I continued, pushing forward. "This is about their financial situation. They are broke, are not they, Mark?" He finally looked up at me, his eyes full of shame and desperation. He gave a small, defeated nod. "They made some bad investments," he admitted. "They lost a lot of their retirement savings. They have been trying to keep up appearances, but they are drowning in debt." So there it was. A partial confession. He was admitting to the financial problems, but he was still holding back the full truth about the house. He was testing the waters, seeing what he could get away with. "And your solution was to lie to me, drain our bank account, and then move them into our home?" I asked, my voice laced with disbelief. "I did not know what else to do," he said, his voice pleading. "My mom was so upset, so scared. She came up with the idea of selling the house and moving in with us. She said it was the only way. I did not want to worry you." "You did not want to worry me?" I repeated, my voice rising slightly. "So instead, you decided to deceive me, betray me, and completely upend my life without my consent. How is that better, Mark? How is that not worrying? I know I handled it badly, he said. I should have told you everything from the start. I was scared. I was ashamed. I did not want you to think less of them, or of me. I looked at him, at his pathetic, pleading face, and I felt nothing. No pity. No sympathy. Just a cold, empty distance. He was not sorry for what he did. He was sorry he got caught. He was sorry that his neat little plan had blown up in his face. He was not thinking about me, about the pain he had caused me. He was only thinking about himself. I want you to do something for me, Mark, I said, my tone shifting from confrontational to instructional. He looked up, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. He thought I was going to give him a way out, a path to forgiveness. Anything, he said. I want you to go home and pack a bag, I said. I want you to go stay with your parents for a while. His face fell. What? Why? I thought you wanted me to fix this. I do, I said. And this is how you are going to start. You are going to go live with them. You are going to experience firsthand what you were trying to force on me. You are going to live in their house, with their problems, with your mother's constant presence and criticism. And you are going to do it for 1 week. He stared at me, speechless. At the end of that week, I continued, we will talk again, and you will tell me honestly if that is the life you want. For us. For the rest of our lives. Because that is what you are signing me up for without my permission. That is not fair, he whispered. Fair? I said, a small bitter laugh escaping my lips. You want to talk about fair? Nothing about this has been fair, Mark. You made your choice when you decided to lie to me. Now, you have to live with the consequences. I stood up from the table. 1 week, Mark. Go stay with your parents, and do not call me, do not text me, and do not, under any circumstances, give my number to your mother again. If you do, this conversation is over. For good. Do you understand? He nodded slowly, his eyes wide with a dawning realization. He was starting to see that this was not something he could just apologize his way out of. He was starting to see that he had broken something that might not be fixable. I understand, he said. Good, I said. And I walked out of the coffee shop without looking back. I got in my car and drove. I did not go back to my sister's house. I just drove, with no destination in mind. I needed to be alone. I needed to process everything that had just happened. I had confronted him. I had drawn a line. I had taken back a small piece of my power. But it did not feel like a victory. It just felt necessary. It was the first step on a long, uncertain road. The week that followed was one of the longest of my life. I stayed at Lisa's, trying to keep myself busy. I went to work. I went to the gym. I read books. I did anything I could to keep my mind from spiraling. True to his word, Mark did not call or text. The silence was deafening. I did not know what it meant. Was he angry? Was he reflecting? Was he just biding his time, waiting for me to cool down so he could go back to his old ways? Lisa was a rock. She did not push me to talk, but she was always there when I needed to. She made sure I was eating. She dragged me out of the house for walks. She let me cry on her shoulder when the weight of it all became too much. What if he does not change? I asked her one night as we were sitting on her balcony, looking up at the stars. Then he is not the man for you, she said simply. You deserve someone who will put you first. Someone who will be your partner, not your child. Someone who will stand with you, not behind his mother. I knew she was right. But the thought of my marriage ending was terrifying. Despite everything, I still loved him. Or maybe I loved the man I thought he was. I was not sure anymore. On the 7th day, my phone rang. It was Mark. I let it ring for a moment, my heart pounding in my chest. Then I took a deep breath and answered. Hello, Mark, I said, my voice calm and steady. Hi, he said. His voice was different. It was quiet, subdued. All the desperation and pleading from our last conversation was gone. He just sounded tired. So, I said, how was your week? There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then he let out a long, heavy sigh. It was hell, he said, his voice cracking. It was absolute hell. I waited for him to continue. I did not realize, he said, his voice full of a genuine, dawning horror. I never realized what it was like. She never stops. From the moment I woke up until the moment I went to sleep. Criticizing my clothes, commenting on what I ate, asking me a million questions about work, about you, about everything. There is no privacy. There is no peace. It is just constant. He paused, and I could hear him take a shaky breath. And the house, it is a disaster. Things are broken everywhere. My dad just ignores it. My mom just complains about it. They do not do anything. They just sit there in the middle of this crumbling mess, expecting someone else to come and fix it for them. He finally understood. He had seen it for himself. He had lived it. The reality of what he had been trying to force on me had finally hit him. And the money, he continued, his voice dropping to a whisper. They are so irresponsible. They spend money they do not have on things they do not need. And they expect me to just bail them out. Every time. They do not even ask anymore. They just assume I will take care of it. Welcome to my world, Mark, I said softly. I am so sorry, he said, and this time it sounded different. It was not the desperate, self-serving apology of a man who had been caught. It was the deep, heartfelt apology of a man who finally understood the true weight of his actions. I have been so blind, so stupid, and so selfish. I put you through that. I was willing to sacrifice your happiness, your sanity, just to avoid having a difficult conversation with my own parents. There is no excuse for what I did. I listened to him, and for the first time in a week, I felt a flicker of something other than anger and betrayal. It was not forgiveness. It was not even hope. It was just a possibility. A tiny, fragile possibility that maybe, just maybe, there was a way forward. So what happens now? I asked. I am going to fix it, he said, his voice stronger now, more resolute. For real this time, I am going to sit down with them. I am going to tell them that they are not moving in with us. Ever. I am going to tell them that the Bank of Mark is closed. I will help them make a budget. I will help them find a financial advisor. I will help them figure out a realistic plan for their future. But I will not be their safety net anymore. And what about the house? I asked. The house that is falling apart and that they are trying to illegally sell to some poor, unsuspecting family? There was another long pause. How did you know about that? He asked, his voice full of shame. I have my sources, I said simply. The question is, what are you going to do about it, Mark? Are you going to let them commit fraud? No, he said, his voice firm. No, I will not let them do that. I will make them take it off the market. I will make them get a proper inspection and disclose everything. It is the only right thing to do. It was everything I had wanted to hear. It was everything he should have said and done from the very beginning. But hearing it now, after everything that had happened, it felt anticlimactic. The words were right, but the damage had been done. The trust had been shattered, and I did not know if it could ever be put back together. That is a good start, Mark, I said. But it is just a start. There is a long way to go before we can even begin to talk about our future. I know, he said, and I am willing to do whatever it takes. I will go to therapy. We can go to couples counseling. I will do anything to earn back your trust. Please just give me a chance to show you that I can be the man you deserve. I thought about it for a long moment. A week ago, I would have said no. I would have told him it was too late. But hearing the change in his voice, hearing the genuine remorse and the newfound resolve, it gave me pause. Maybe he was capable of change. Maybe our marriage was worth fighting for. Okay, Mark, I said slowly. Here is what is going to happen. You are going to do everything you just said you would do. You are going to have that conversation with your parents. You are going to make them take the house off the market. You are going to get them professional help. And you are going to do it all on your own. I will, he promised. And while you are doing that, I continued, I am going to be making some changes of my own. I am moving back into our house. But you are not. You can find a temporary place to stay. An apartment, a hotel. I do not care. But you are not coming back until I am ready. Okay, he said, his voice quiet. He did not argue. He did not protest. He just accepted it. That, more than anything, told me that he was serious. And we are separating our finances, I added. Completely. We will keep the joint account for the mortgage and the bills, and we will each contribute our share. But everything else is separate. No more secret withdrawals. No more financial deception. I understand, he said. This is your last chance, Mark, I said, my voice firm. There are no more chances after this. If you slip up, if you go back to your old ways, if you let your mother manipulate you even one more time, we are done. For good. Do you understand me? I understand, he said again, loud and clear. The next few weeks were strange. I moved back into my house. It felt empty without Mark, but it also felt peaceful. I was in control. It was my space again. Mark did what he said he would do. He found a small furnished apartment to rent. He had the difficult conversation with his parents. I was not there, of course, but he told me about it later. He said it was the hardest thing he had ever done. Carol had screamed. She had cried. She had accused him of betraying her. She had said all the things she had said to me, but this time she was saying them to her own son. And for the first time, he did not back down. He told her, in no uncertain terms, that her plan was over. That she had put him in an impossible position and had almost cost him his marriage. He told her that he loved her, but he was not responsible for her happiness or her financial security. He was an adult with his own life, his own wife, and his own responsibilities. According to Mark, Tom had just sat there, silent as always. But Carol had fought him every step of the way. When he told her she had to take the house off the market and disclose the foundation issues, she had called him ungrateful and cruel. She had accused me of poisoning his mind against her. But Mark had held firm. He had told her it was not up for discussion. It was a matter of legality and basic human decency, and he would not be a party to her fraud. He had left them with the number of a financial advisor and a contractor and told them that they needed to start taking responsibility for their own lives. He started going to therapy. He found a counselor on his own and went to his first session. He called me afterward and told me it was hard, but good. He said he was starting to understand the roots of his behavior, the dynamic with his mother that had been established since he was a child. He was starting to see how he had allowed himself to become trapped in a cycle of appeasement and avoidance. We started going to couples counseling together. Our first few sessions were difficult. There was a lot of anger and hurt to unpack. I did not hold back. I told him exactly how his actions had made me feel. Betrayed, disrespected, invisible. I told him that I was not sure if I could ever trust him again. He did not get defensive. He did not make excuses. He just listened. He acknowledged my pain. He took responsibility for his role in creating it. He apologized again and again, and slowly, very slowly, a tiny crack of light started to appear in the darkness that had enveloped our marriage. It was not easy. There were days when I wanted to give up, when the anger and resentment would bubble up and I would be sure that we were doomed. But then I would see him trying. I would see the small changes in his behavior, the way he would call me to discuss even minor decisions, the way he would set clear boundaries with his mother when she tried to overstep. She did try, of course. She would call him crying, telling him how miserable she was. She would try to guilt him into coming over to fix things, into giving her more money. But each time he would hold the line. He would be firm but kind. He would offer her resources but not solutions. He would tell her that he loved her, but that his priority was his marriage and his wife. The biggest test came about 2 months later. Carol called Mark in a panic. They had finally gotten a full inspection on their house, and the news was even worse than we thought. The foundation was so bad that the house was deemed structurally unsound. It was basically condemned. They had to move out immediately. My first reaction was a surge of fear. This was it. This was the crisis that would send Mark running back to his old habits. He would feel responsible. He would feel guilty. He would try to rescue them. He called me as soon as he got off the phone with her. His voice was stressed but calm. "I have some news about my parents," he said. And he told me everything. "What are they going to do?" I asked, holding my breath. "My mom wants them to move in with us, of course," he said, and my heart sank. "She said it is an emergency, that we have no choice." "And what did you say?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "I told her no," he said, his voice firm and unwavering. "I told her that was not an option, and it would never be an option. I told her that I was sorry for their situation, but that our home was not the solution." I let out a breath I did not even realize I had been holding. "What did she say?" "She said a lot of things," he said with a wry, tired laugh. "None of them very nice. But I did not engage, I just repeated my boundary. Then I gave her the number of a long-term stay hotel and the name of a realtor who specializes in rental properties. I told her I would help them with the first month's rent on a small apartment. But that was all I could do. He had done it. He had faced the ultimate test, and he had passed. He had stood up to his mother in the middle of a crisis, and he had chosen me. He had chosen our marriage. In that moment, I knew that we were going to be okay. The road ahead was still long. The trust was still fragile. But we had a foundation to build on. A new foundation. One built on honesty and respect and clear, unshakable boundaries. Mark did not move back in right away. We took it slow. We went on dates. We talked, really talked, for hours on end. We got to know each other again, not as the people we had been, but as the people we were becoming. His parents ended up selling their house to a developer for the value of the land. They got just enough money to pay off their debts and put a down payment on a small condo in a retirement community an hour away. The distance was a blessing. It gave us all space to breathe. Carol was never happy about it. She never forgave me for what she saw as turning her son against her. Our relationship was polite but distant. I no longer tried to win her approval. I no longer cared what she thought of me. Her power over me was broken. Her power over her son was broken. About 6 months after that first, terrible Sunday dinner, Mark moved back home. It felt different this time. The house felt lighter. Our relationship felt stronger. He was no longer a boy, torn between his mother and his wife. He was a man. He was my husband, my partner. We were sitting on the couch one evening watching a movie. He turned to me and took my hand. "Thank you," he said, his voice soft. "For what?" I asked. "For not giving up on me," he said. "For showing me how to be a better man. You saved me. You saved us." I leaned my head on his shoulder. "We saved us," I said. Together. The scars were still there. They would probably always be there. A faint reminder of the betrayal and the pain. But they were just scars. They were not open wounds anymore. And in a way, they made us stronger. They were a map of where we had been and a reminder of how far we had come. The storm had passed and our home was quiet again. But this time, it was a true and lasting peace.